Happy greetings tonight, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. I am so excited to discuss tonight's topic. It is all about merging your divinity with ego, which is kind of strange, I know, but we're going to talk about it. And I have lots of ways of how to bring forward this information. So I wanted to thank you all for being here with me because it means that you have realized that you have the divine within you, that you yourself are divine. So how do we apply this information in this material world? That is what we're going to discuss tonight. So first, I want to introduce you to an idea. If you don't know already, Carl Jung was famous for his anima and animus. And he had a famous quote talking about figures of light, that one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. So Carl Jung always believed that if we did not look at the darker parts of ourselves, known as the shadow, and bring that forwards to the surface and make it conscious within ourselves, then we would fail to actually become a whole integrated being that would actually be the divine figure of light that we are aiming for. And the reason why we are all aiming for is because that is our original source. That is where we come from. We are beings of light and energy, and they are one and the same. So we're going to discuss more how we can actually really make that conscious within ourselves. So the anima and animus is something I am not going to advocate, like Carl Jung, in trying to become your divine self. These types of archetypes that he described were full of tragedy, and they play out in our worldly relationships with each other. Now, to the outside eye, it does have positive elements within it, but there's also an element of tragedy and hardship too. So we have to be aware of when we are playing the figure of light, such as the anima and animus. And only when we become aware of that, then we can truly become the divine being that we always were. And it just goes with just realizing that within ourselves. So the anima for the woman is first described, there's 4 stages that when a woman becomes aware of herself, of her own desires and wants, usually around her teenage years and possibly early 20s, this describes the Eve stage. Eve is in desire of basically looking for love, affection, and attention in that way, trying to become the object of man's desire. Also looking for security and looking to be a nourisher or nurturer. So starting to think about possibly motherhood, or even just being a nurturer to any of her lovers that she takes with her into her life. So when you go through that stage, and that is basically the subconscious acting out that archetype, you can move into the Helen of Troy stage. Helen of Troy is where a woman has a desire to create. So she's a little bit older, maybe she's in her mid-20s or so, maybe her 30s. The age range varies from individual to individual, but this is the desire to be seen as intelligent and successful and capable of her own conquests, basically, known as, victorious over everything that she wants to achieve. So that's the Helen of Troy. Then the 3rd stage is the Mary stage. The Mary stage is when a woman starts to possess a certain sense of virtue within herself. So she is then seen as a motherly figure, very loving to all. She could be spiritual or religious type of pursuits happen within her. So this is when she starts to possess virtue and really hold on to that, and maybe is realizing some of the other things that she has done in the past was not up to her standards as a virtuous person. The fourth stage is the Sophia stage. Sophia, as you know, is the Hebrew word for wisdom. And Sophia is basically the personification of wisdom. So this is the wiser old woman, all powerful, all knowing, fair judge, and is all spirit, is very aware of herself as spirit rather than just her physical body and her physical pursuits that she made in her life. She can also seem kind of detached from the world, and she become a messenger or a guide for others. So this is the anima of women. So just kind of be aware of that as the different stages. The next category we have is the animus. The animus is the male category of the subconscious images of the figures of light. So the very first one that a man might feel is physical power, terms of trying to become a man of action, a man of physical strength and endurance, trying to prove themselves as a younger man that they have the strength. You see this in gym class early on as society kind of trains young men in this way. And I think that's why Carl Jung was able to see these archetypes, because society in many ways shapes these into us. And we'll talk more about that later. The next stage is the action or the romance, the man of action or romance, as he labeled it. And this is where you have a search or quest for love. You become known as the hunter or the hero in your life. So you can rescue damsels in distress, and you can fight against bullies, and you can become the hero to others. A hunter, you're on a search, you're on a quest, looking for something, whether it be love, whether it be security, or whatever it is. You are in that stage of action. The third stage is the professor or the clergyman or the orator. So clergyman, like a priest, clergy. This is where you start to look for possibly your status in the world. He suggested this was a lot of politicians, the place where politicians are, and academic success. You might be in the pursuit of more knowledge to become more knowledgeable, known for your intellect and your logic and your reason. And so this is where that happens with a man when he gets to that stage. The fourth stage is the spiritual guide, the priest, and the Hermes, the messenger of God, the helpful in his, to be helpful is basically part of his dream. The idea that he wants to be a guide for others, the same thing as the counterpart to Sophia, the female form, the anima. So this is where you become like that Gandalf or Elrond figure, in a way, the wise man. People come to you for counsel, and you get to a certain stage in your life where you naturally slip into these. This is kind of stages of life. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but when you aim to be these figures, that's when the tragedy happens, Carl Jung says. That's when there can be a dark side to it. If you're too conscious and aware of what you are doing, becoming these figures of light, then you're not really becoming the figures of light unless you work on your darker sides and you truly are aware of what you are doing. So that what happens when you get to like the Sophia stage and the spiritual guide, this is what happens when people try to take advantage of others. They become cult leaders, or those that are in charge of others and don't have the best intention. The professor, the political areas, when you have a politician that's not really pure in their intentions either. So there's a lot of tragedy as well as comedy within these archetypes that Carl Jung described. And I wanted to discuss Alan Watts. Alan Watts is really known for discussing, basically, he was a very famous British speaker, philosopher. He was really known for a lot of ideas in terms of just being very aware of himself and trying to bring forward that awareness to others. So this is what he said about that. The ego to the divine, he had a very famous speech about, and he talked about this. Alan Watts said that everything is stored in the subconscious, including the monsters of the deep. So all the things that go bump in the night and the dark monsters, the lizards, the crocodiles, the primordial slime, he called it. And the divine is also in the subconscious of every human being as well. So in all souls on earth, we have this stored in our subconscious, monsters and the divine. So if you are going to bring the divine to surface, if you want to start doing that because you become aware of yourself in that form, then you must be wise and know something about it and not jump to silly conclusions or delusions, so that all aspects of yourself is integrated, of the unconscious and the conscious, and it becomes like a flower. It comes out like a beautiful circle, which to me represents wholeness. Alan Watts took a comparison of Meher Baba, and I looked him up, and he was like this famous Indian guru. And Alan Watts said in his speech that he was running around and telling everyone that he was God and that he was in charge of the universe. And he was trying to, I guess, help everybody else know this. But because he was telling everyone that he was in charge of the universe and expected everyone to treat him as such, and he developed a following in that way, it became somewhat intolerable for people. And other souls noticed that. And Carl Jung would call this inflation. That's what Alan Watts said. Because he was turning his ego into God, not having God as his ego, which is a completely different thing. And we will talk about how to do that through the words of Jesus in the Gospel of Thomas that I found. There is some very enlightening verses here and sayings of Jesus. The Gospel of Thomas has a saying where Jesus said, "Be passerbys," in the Gospel of Thomas. And what he means is that it tells how he thinks about life in terms of how we don't really belong to this world. We are only visiting. This is all just temporary. And so if you can become aware enough to act like a passerby, that you're just visiting and it's just all temporary here, then you will have a better life, less suffering involved. Said, we belong to the realm of spirit and light, not this world of flesh and darkness. So this gnosis of Thomas offers the knowledge of ourselves that we have the divine within us. And we don't really belong here, but we are experiencing it for a temporary while. And so Jesus in this gospel is suggesting we live our lives as if we are just passing through earth. We actually belong to the eternal realm of light. We need to regain knowledge of our true selves through this process of gnosis. And you can do that with the sayings of Jesus. And not only Jesus, but Buddha, the Dalai Lama, Confucius, all the masters that we regard in history as having some kind of wisdom to leave Earth. They were known throughout history to give these spiritual reminders to all souls that all the suffering that you are doing on Earth right now, it's a temporary thing. It is for you to go through, but to eventually realize your divinity through those obstacles and challenges. The Gospel of Thomas from the Gnosis of the Self is that we are not our bodies. Our true selves are spiritual, immaterial, and not of flesh. The body and flesh are weaker compared to the greater power of the spirit, because you can kill a body, you can do anything you want to a body, but you can never kill the spirit. You can never kill that soul and that spirit. Jesus teaches that I marvel how this great wealth has come to dwell in this poverty. So he's talking about how you can be a very poor person living in poverty in terms of worldly wealth, But if you have a wealth of spirit, then you are even more rich than the wealthiest billionaire on earth. And that is the absolute truth when it comes to spiritual greatness and wealth. And he's speaking about that power. This gospel teaches us that our souls dwelled in a spiritual realm of light before as energy, and we came into our bodies temporarily. We live a lifetime each time. Jesus tells his disciples in the Gospel of Thomas that if they ask where they are from, they should say, "We come from the light, where the light came into being by itself and stood at rest." Now, this follows along with Einstein's idea that energy is neither created nor destroyed. The spiritual realm of light is a condition of rest or repose, while this world is a place of agitation or movement. So some of you have felt that, the stillness of the true self, especially when you do meditation, when you're sitting in nature and you're quiet and you experience the stillness all around you. You can experience what Jesus is talking about, the idea that the true self is really one of stillness and total rest. But this world is about movement and about evoking us and agitating us. And we must remember our true stillness in order to really survive the crazy chaos and movement of this world. So our destiny is to return to this realm of light from which we came from. And that's the true kingdom of God, according to Thomas in the Gospel of Thomas. Jesus says in it, the end will be where the beginning is. When we finally realize this about ourselves, as Jesus taught, we can experience a consciousness shift into serenity. So in the saying 28 in the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus said, "I stood at rest in the midst of the world, and in flesh I appeared to them. I found them all drunk." Drunk means unaware in this case, "and did not find any of them thirsty for knowledge. My soul ached for the human race, because they are blind in the hearts and do not see. For they came into the world empty, and they also seek to depart from the world empty, spiritually empty if they do not see. But meanwhile, they are drunk. When they shake off their wine, then they will change their ways." When we listen to this message, or other messages like this from other humans that have also passed this spiritual reminder, then you can come to realize who you really are, if you really take that message in. And how you can start to take that in is by understanding that when we realize we are not the thing we do or say, but something far beyond, then we can experience rest and repose of the spiritual realm within us, even in this world. And we can stand in the center of the storm while the vortex of the storm is going on around us. We can stand there in our stillness, and we can endure this world, and we can know ourselves as divine, and we can be part of this world with our divinity intact. Plato said something very similar, that human beings are essentially souls, and our souls existed before we were born in the material world, and they are immortal and will continue to exist after our bodies die. And in Plato's dialogue Timaeus, he says this, "The gods made our souls with a seed of the divine within them. We were educated about the universe and then sent down to live in bodies. Because of physical bodies, we tend to forget the things we were taught about the universe as we existed as souls." So the philtrum is the indentation above the upper lip. This is a Hebrew saying, and somebody left this comment on my channel. It was funny to me. So whoever did that, they definitely understood this, and I think they're probably a Gnostic in many ways. But they said, were you not born with a philtrum? Because there's an idea that it is said that the mark of the upper lip is that when an angel, when we were in our immaterial existence, an angel put their finger over our lips to make us forget or to shush us about the secrets of the universe, and the heavenly knowledge, so that we can experience the material world. And so that idea kind of connects to what Plato said there. And Plato goes on and says, but through philosophy and education, we can achieve happiness. So we can then learn those secrets of the universe, and we can explore them more. So the Gospel of Thomas insists that it is not philosophy that does this. It is Jesus' sayings, not philosophy, that brings insight to our souls and reveals our true origins of the world of spirit of light. So it is Jesus, not philosophy, that offers the way back to where we originated. And Jesus, saying 49 in the Gospel of Tom, says, blessed are those who are solitary and chosen. Now, this is not chosen in the idea that God chooses certain select people. This has a far deeper meaning. This is talking about the unification of the self, merging the small ego, the earthly ego, with the divine. Solitary in this idea, it refers to a person who has overcome the duality of this world, the divisions and the diversities of life in the world, and has become unified. And we can call that integrated if you want, but it means to understand and comprehend the duality that you see comes from the same source, and that we could not have black without white. We couldn't have salt without pepper. So you can start to see how yin and yang truly exists, and that balance is created within your own mind, and the inner peace and the serenity to know why certain things exist. So why does evil exist? So that we can know the good. Why does grief and pain exist? So that we can know love and joy. So the saying 22 of Jesus in that gospel said, Jesus said, when you make the two into one, and when you make the inside like the outside, and the outside like the inside, and the upper like the lower, and when you make female and male into a single one, so that the male will not be male, nor the female be female, when you make eyes in place of one eye, a hand in place of a hand, a foot in place of a foot, meaning a hand, my hand in place of your hand, and vice versa. A foot, my foot in place of the foot of a homeless person. You know, I'm in home, but they're on the street. So you're literally putting yourself into somebody else's shoes in your mind, in that way, figuratively speaking. So an image also in place of an image, he says, then you will enter the kingdom of heaven and know yourself as divine. When all becomes one and not judged as one less than the other, this is true equilibrium. Then you act as God on earth, within the ego, within the fleshly self. And when we achieve knowledge of ourselves, when we really understand where we are, from then these two ones become one, truly one. The ego and the divine merge. And what you can say to yourself is that I know the real me now. You know, this is no longer the false me, but I know I am a single one. And when I know myself, I also know Jesus. And I can then realize that I am the light as Jesus is. And so the difference between me and Jesus also fades away. That's what you can start to realize. So Psalm 108 affirms this. When Jesus says, "Whoever drinks from my mouth will become like me. I myself shall become that person, and the hidden things will be revealed to him." So when I know Jesus as divine, respect him in his teachings and understand that interconnection between myself, then I know myself as divine as well, and all his teachings resonate with me on a deeper level. That is the key to our salvation. And the moment that the divine replaces the small ego that never really existed, the ego does not really exist. It's just a word that psychologists used a long time ago to describe the difference between the divine actions, the divine self that sometimes people show, and the ego self, which is not so divine that sometimes people show. So they had to come up with a word that showed the mask that we wear. And not only are these negative actions, but these are actions of self-doubt. These are actions of self-hate. So those are all false in a way. You may feel them, but they are part of the ego, unaware of its divine self. And the ego really does not exist. It is only the divine self that exists. And when you realize that, life can change and you can have a consciousness shift from that moment. So, as the Pleiadians said in a message to Billy Meyer in 1975 on the Swiss Alps, with wisdom and love, the human is master over all creation. It's kind of funny that I named my channel that. But before I knew that Pleiadian message that resonates deep within my soul, I knew that when you take your experiences that you've had in your life and you apply them in a way where you can help others, where you can help yourself achieve a better life because you learn from your past mistakes and you apply love to others and to yourself, then that's all you need in this world. You become a master of all creation, creation within yourself, and you will have the conviction and the strength to create whatever it is that you will. And that is the most important, is the cultivation of your soul, not external activities or outward graces, but always to go deeper inwards for your own salvation of spirit is really about freeing the spirit and bringing the divine to surface without delusions or wrong assumptions, as Alan Watts pointed out, that we don't want to become intolerable to each other on earth. We need to find a way where the divine can surface in one another as we recognize it in each other. Like we say namaste to each other, divine light in me recognizes the divine light in all of you. But how do we become tolerable in the idea that we're not running around playing gods, but we're actually being our truly divine self? So Jesus gives us a little bit more indication of what to do in Gospel of Thomas. He says, do not lie, and do not do anything you do not want to do. And to me, this means about being your true self, really honoring what it is that you came here to earth from a soul, from an immaterial spiritual existence into a physical existence. And when you do things that you do not want to do, you are just compromising those wishes and those desires. But when you do everything that you want to do and do not want to do, and you say it with conviction, then that is really what you are supposed to do, Jesus said. Now, of course, you have to be smart about it, right? Because if you want to do everything that you want to do and you do it, but it hurts others, it causes harm to other souls. There are spiritual consequences to that, because even though you are unconscious or unaware of it, maybe in this lifetime, eventually you will have a spiritual awakening where you will recognize what you did to others. So you want to understand there is cause and effect, and there are consequences to deciding what it is you want to do. But if there are things that you want to do and you're holding yourself back, Jesus says, do not do that. And in fact, he says this, that people were actually encouraged to let go of their things and to let go of their attachments to the material world and start to become beggars. And so the disciples were supposed to go around and kind of ask for food, live off the kindness of others. And when they did that, Jesus said, spread the messages that I'm telling you about the spiritual reminders of the soul, but also heal those that their home that you enter into. So healing others is also part of finding the kingdom of heaven again. Because when you heal others, you will know that you are healing yourself. There is a oneness within healing others, and you can experience that the more and more that you heal. And as he says, that the takeaway message from all of this is that be as passers-bys in this world and enjoy your experience, knowing that it is temporary. And when it is not a joy, then create joy where there is not joy, because that is ultimately your responsibility as a divine creative being. And so to merge the ego and the divine together is to know thyself, to have true gnosis, what the Gnostics were after, what many mystics were after. And from there, it's a consciousness shift, because then you become truly conscious and aware of all your actions. You are no longer drunk, as Jesus called it. And you are no longer going to leave this world empty, but you will be spiritually fulfilled so that you will move into the next stage and experience something even greater, because you will have the consciousness, the tools, and the wisdom that will carry on through, because you will know yourself. And that's really what we're doing here on Earth, is we're always learning. It doesn't matter if you identify as an Earth human, a starseed from another planet, an elf, a fae, anything in that nature does not matter. Those are energies and spirits that color us, and they make us unique individuals, and they play with the diversity of this world. But what we are all here to do on every single planet of intelligent life is to finally know our divine origin, because we did come from somewhere and we will return. And as science is showing us more and more, and we're going to get more proof of it, quantum mechanics and quantum physics is showing us that we are just energy. We are just light. So you need to remember that when you are in this material world, and then you can enter into the divine. Now, I have some personal tips and hints of how I experienced this merging with my ego. And basically, I allowed my ego to kind of fade away and the divinity to replace that. So these are my tips and hints, and then we'll go to the comments. So what I said is this. So I kind of went through all those stages that he was talking about. I went through the anima because I identify as a female. So yes, I was an Eve. I was definitely an Eve looking for love. I definitely became a Helen trying to become successful, going to school. And then I became a Mary, or I'm kind of in the Mary stage, but I kind of skipped the Mary. I'm now in the Sophia. I wanted to jump right to it, but I am 38, so I guess that makes sense there. But I am somewhere in this stage. But then I realized I had a real kind of beautiful awakening moment where I realized that all of this is integrated in myself. And when I started to really look at my life and look at kind of the darkness and the things that I haven't looked at before, that's when everything started to change. And that's when I could really start to experience my divine self rather than the ego or the unconscious archetypes that might play out. So this is what I say: surrender all of your desires, in the idea that you can have goals and you can have missions, but there is a difference between having a desire to do something in terms of being obsessed or attached to the outcome. This is very much like Stoicism. You should just not be attached to the outcome of whatever happens and enjoy life for its experience as it comes. So what I started realizing is that when I surrendered all of my desires to, have love, become successful, become wiser. When I stopped desiring those things, they came to me. And that is the complete truth. I saw it with my husband. I stopped desiring love, and I was just my free spirit one night. And then I met my husband. I stopped desiring becoming, successful, and I kind of changed my life, and I started doing what I really loved, and I started making videos, and things are just kind of falling in line for me, and I feel really happy doing this. And so the search ends after you surrender all desires. The search ends. So you're no longer a pilgrim or a questing soul kind of wandering around the world, but then you can actually become an explorer, and experimentation begins. What this means is that you're no longer looking for something that you might lack, but you're finally content with whatever it is in your life right now, and then you explore it more. You experiment, and you see what it is that you can change. What is it that you can do something new and create something new within your life if you are not happy and you are bored. And the other thing I learned in merging the divinity with my ego is to just be you, flaws and all. This is a hard one because that's the problem with the anima and animus. They are figures of light. So we just see their goodness and their good side. Galadriel was a character very much like an animus within J.R.R. Tolkien's writings. We don't see her bad side except when she shows that with the water witch, and that she has this other side to her that could take power. She could take the ring, but she denies that. So in some way, it's a triumph over the anima, the dark side of the anima. So she kind of is a victory over that trauma that could happen, or that tragedy, as Carl Jung said, that those archetypes provide. But just be you, just be you, the best you that you can possibly be. Now, to some people, it means that you have to change the outside completely to be your best version of yourself. I don't recommend going out there and getting surgery and updating your look just because you want to look a certain way. That's not what I'm going at. I'm going at with learning how to be content with who you are, staring at the mirror until you finally see your beauty, flaws and all, strangeness and all, natural beauty. And you really recognize that within yourself. This is when things start to really change, because then you're no longer feeling a lack of what you are not, but you finally see all that you are. And it's a really beautiful experience. And you start to see that the God self is constantly learning, evolving, and changing and growing. But at one layer, at the topmost level, it is at rest. So it is completely happy with everything and is no longer looking for change in that way. So just be you. Be you, the best you that you can possibly be. That's what I would say. And I also learned that unconditional love is really the key. Learning how to apply it to others with no attachment to any kind of response. but just loving others regardless. And that love is like energy coming out forwards from a goddess or a god. If you think about all the tales of the goddesses and gods, if they're benevolent and kind, then they will love others. They will love either their creations, or they will love others around them, or nature as it is. So you can decide what kind of god or goddess you want to be. But if you do really want to experience yourself as divine, in terms of how Alan Watts and many others have said, that you do have to follow the laws of the universe in terms of becoming that cosmic love, that breath of life of creation. So when you start to apply it without the results in mind, in terms of just loving people regardless, and if they don't love you back, that's fine. And if they treat you terribly, you can say something to them, but at the same time, it's really not worth it, because people will only respond to you at the level that they're at. And so it's a refracted universe. So there's all these different levels of consciousness that you're experiencing that are kind of as mirrors, to each other. So I say this too: don't hold or hide anything. Don't hold back. Say what you feel, kind of like what Jesus said. Think about your consequences in terms of experiences. So before you say something that you might regret, you want to kind of have a foresight where you can put yourself into the future of whatever comes out of your mouth, and see how that can be reacted to in a way. If you can do that, then that can be better for you. But at the same time, don't hold back. If it's truthful, if it's honest, and if it comes from a good place of just trying to help others or trying to get your needs met, then do that, because that is satisfying that divine need to experience this life in the way that you wished and that your soul came to this earth to experience. And the last one I say is live fully aware of what you do and all stages as part of the self. So when you become conscious and aware of the anima and animus, when you become conscious and aware of the archetypes that exist in your life and that you play out, when you become fully aware of that and can kind of look back. So, after this video, you might want to sit down in your journal and say, I wonder what stage I'm at right now. That will do something to you. It's not that you need to judge yourself. You don't need to punish yourself for playing those archetypes, because they're in the collective for a reason. They are patterns that exist so that we get to know ourselves. All of these levels eventually lead up to Sophia and the spiritual man. So there's a pattern that exists. There is a kind of a chronological order of souls going through their learning and growing. And so just kind of take note of where you are right now, and then take that in as, but that's just a stage. That's not all of me. That's just a stage that I'm in right now. And I am far beyond that as well. So I hope that this gave you some ideas and some, seeds to plant of how to really start to harness the divinity within yourself on earth and bring it to the surface without the delusions that Meyer Baba gave and things like that. Because as Alan Watts said, it becomes intolerable. I think we don't want to play God, but we want to merge ourselves and become as loving as this force of the universe that we believe is out there. All we have to do is see it within ourselves, see the divine within ourselves. And then that is when the light comes to surface. And then we can truly be that divine soul on earth. So when you are ready for that, that is your next stage. That is your birthright, really. But some souls just don't want to have that experience, and that is fine. But eventually you might get to a point where you look at your life and you start questioning, there's more to this life than this. There must be more. And it's almost like waking up from a dream. So when you get to that point where you feel like you're waking up from a dream, then it's basically time. It's a time for a consciousness shift. And for some people, it can be scary because they might not be ready. But at the same time, it could be a really great one because it brings new power into your life. You're no longer the victim, and you can recreate from that very moment. You can start over again, and you, like I said, you can become an explorer here on Earth because you are just a passerby. And you can experiment, and you could become almost wild with your experimentation, doing things that you would never even dream possible. I ask myself every day, I'm like, I think I must have been crazy to create this video, because not even this video, but even just this channel. But at the same time, I understand that that was my soul needing to experiment, to explore, and to express what more can I do on Earth. And that's why I really came back from my near-death experience, I believe. I believe I was not done yet because I was not done experimenting and experiencing on Earth all that I can. And there is a story, there's a collective story playing out where we have different levels of dimensions and consciousness. So just be aware of where you are. And that is when you can know the true self, the whole self, and be fully integrated with all dimensions, all the way from the first dimension all the way to the 11th dimension. And you can experience yourself like that on Earth. And that's when things don't bother you any longer. And you can experience emotional ups and downs, but there's a difference with being sucked up in the vortex of the world rather than standing strong in the middle of the storm, solitary, as Jesus said. When you become solitary, when you don't depend, when your happiness does not depend on others, when your happiness depends only on yourself, that is when the kingdom of heaven opens up within. And I have experienced that, and now I see, looking into it deeper, that that was always the message that Jesus was trying to give. So let's go to the comments. I can't wait to read some of your comments here. Hi, Garrett. Welcome to my channel. Just found your channel, been really blown away. Well, good. Yes, it's a weird one. But like I said, I have nothing to lose. I have only souls to gain that will join me on this journey. I am definitely somebody that I was kind of sick of people not being really their powerful selves, and myself included. And so I'm so happy to bring that in. And that's why I like to use Tolkien as a reference as well, because the elves represent the divine self. And I really believe that. So the Elven Light University and all of that I will get into will be how we can apply it even more on a physical level, becoming our higher selves. It's a really great example of that, not only through Jesus and through Buddha and other master teachers, but there are characters in stories and myths that we can look up to and understand that that's what they were doing. They were always reminding us of our true selves, our divine selves. So welcome to the channel and joining the community. Peachy Fruit. I feel like all levels of the anima are present in me in different levels. I definitely feel more at the end of the Helen stage into Mary. And that's what happened to me, is like when you start to integrate all those levels into you, and you start to see, okay, so you're all those levels of the subconscious of what Carl Jung was saying, but you're more. And also you're not just looking at those, because Carl Jung was concerned that, I don't think we have this problem in today's age. I think more and more people are not afraid to look at the darkness. And it just has to do with the awakening that's going on. But Carl Jung was was noticing that people would sometimes, play nice. They would go to church or they would go to temple and they would act holier than thou, but they really were not working on themselves. Then they would do things behind other people's backs. So he was making a commentary on humanity to make sure that if we really wanted to become our figures of light, then we really had to work on ourselves. So looking at all those stages and the darkness, that is when you really integrate everything. So it sounds like you're in that stage there, Peachy Fruit. Siren of the Void, my body will change, but my soul never will be. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's like the body is different, and every reincarnation we can enjoy it. We should look at the body as just a vessel of growth and spiritual development. So the way that you look is important to the experiences that you wanted to have. And the way that you look is very important to the souls that you will attract. Not everybody is attracted to blondes or brunettes. So the way that you come in, it could attract the person that is attracted to your type of body, your type of look. And we have to remember that the soul is really the most important, and that it is great to have that mind-body connection, working out, taking care of the body, because the body is like a plant or a machine, if people want to think of it that way. And so you have to nourish it, right? You have to keep it going to have the experiences as long as you want to on Earth. But it's important that we don't attach ourselves to the body, as the Gospel of Thomas was suggesting, which I think is wonderful. And the Gnostics really take that particular gospel to heart. They're very inspired by it, obviously by what you can see, because it's all about unification and, becoming the divine self. Hello. Greetings, hello. A man who doesn't have a mental life has no spirit, so the spirit is dead. Yeah, or at least it's maybe temporarily dead. Or, I mean, everything is about the mind, right? Perceiving. So if you see the spirit is dead, or if you have that experience, then it will be. So it's very important to see the spirit does go on, and that the consciousness moves on. And I think that is really the problem with, very materialists in their view, because I have a feeling that they won't experience the afterlife. Because if they're so convicted, remember, they're creative beings too. So if they're so convicted in this life, when I hear them talk about how there's no consciousness after this lifetime, guess what? I don't think they will experience it. Or maybe they will in terms of a kind of a reflection on their past life, but maybe they won't go on to a new life because their consciousness will not take them there. They are the creators of their own universe. We each are perceiving our own universe. And that is the divine soul realizing that. So yeah, I mean, that's a great comment. Peachy Fruit, I have felt that within nature, an inner quiet that resonates from somewhere deep beyond my physical form. Yeah, that stillness is reflected in the stillness of nature. Now, although nature moves around, a tree stands still while the wind blows around. I think I love trees the most in terms of the mirroring effect of that stillness, because they're so strong and sturdy. But when you are quiet and you're just deep in nature, I think that you can get in touch with that. Yeah, maybe that's why I really love going out there. Peachy Fruit, the drunk on ego. Yeah, that's a good one too. Yeah, and drunk on ego, since there is no ego, it's just a word that kind of defines our unawareness and our unconsciousness. Then, yeah, I think so. I think people can be kind of drunk on that. And I attribute it to, I think that there's a resistance. I think that there's a force in this world and in this universe that sometimes acts against spiritual awakenings. And the reason is because it's about experiencing the material and sensuous world. So when you awaken to the spiritual, sometimes the material loses its value. So those that want to experience the material and they want to experience all that the senses can have, money and women and men and wealth and status and cars and all that, then they don't want that spiritual awakening, because then the material becomes not as important as the soul fulfillment. That is when you have a real consciousness shift within yourself. Now, the question is, and this is something that I have not really experienced myself, but the question is, can someone truly be, fully wealthy, as Jesus was saying that, being in poverty is more wealthy, but can someone truly be wealthy on a material level, have everything that they want and desire, and at the same time be also truly spiritual? That's still a question to me. I don't have enough money to even say that, but to even think about that. But because I have always been, as Jesus said, I kind of grew up poor, and I've always had I've had less than others. So I have always had a wealth of spirit, and I've known that about myself. And that's why it hasn't been such, I guess, hardship. But my question is, can someone be completely wealthy and have all that they want, and at the same time have also a wealthy spirit? If you can, I would think that would be achieving a really great balance. But it would be hard, because you can be really tempted. Chris, hi, my Gavanin, which means well met in Elvish. I love your energy so much. You're so relaxed, but you're still stern. So, so I'm resonating with you a lot. I'll take that as a compliment. I like that. I mean, stern, can we call it serious? Because I'm really serious. But yeah, I am relaxed inside, though. I like that compliment. Miss Jamie, genuine authenticity, path of enlightenment. Yeah, exactly. It is being really, truly authentic. But also, as Jesus said, that it is important to heal others, because then you really learn that oneness that you experience with others, healing them, helping them. And I don't think he necessarily meant physically healing, but it could, but also just healing through words, guidance, encouragement, being a friend. And that's really, I guess, most important to Jesus. That's why he said, love thy neighbors, because that was important to your own awakening. That is really what it is. When you love your neighbor, be it a Republican, a Democrat, a Jew, a Muslim, it doesn't matter. When you love another that's different than you, then you are overcoming the diversity of the earth. And then that's when you know the divine self as one with Jesus, because Jesus was in that mindset. That's the Christ consciousness. So when you have the Christ consciousness, then you have the divine self come to surface. So, yay, Peachy Fruit. I am starting to accept just being me. That's good. That really is good. Yeah, it's true. Like Blueberry was so sweet in the very beginning. And I love that I can, inspire a sense of like, be a high elf if you want, but at the same time, just be Blueberry too. That's so important to me. I want every single soul on earth to know how precious they are, because I think that it's the variety of perspectives that really make this world go round, this universe go round, really. We need everyone to be as different, as luminous as they can, because if we come from prime source that has been refracted light in a way, then we are all rays, but we are all so different. And that perspective provides even a greater expansion of the mind of the prime source that we all will return back to one day. And I really do believe that. Welcome, Angel. Cool channel. Thank you. Han and Lei. Siren of the Void, are you an 8 on the Enneagram? I have to do the Enneagram again, and I'll do a video on the Enneagram. No, I'm not an 8. I was a 2 or a 1. So I was 2 or 1. That was my personality type. I think it's the helper, and then it's like the peacemaker. So yes. And it makes sense, I think. Peachy Fruit, why do you think it's so easy for people to lose themselves? I think, as the Gospel of Thomas kind of pointed out, that we are in our physical bodies, and there is a veil, there's a denseness of this dimension that we start to fear things. We start to fear things that can hurt us because we are in these physical bodies that can have pain and suffering. So with fear is where anger and all those kind of negative things come through. Now, anger isn't always negative to me, because that can also mean a truth coming forwards that violates your soul in a way. But I do believe that it is fear of our fragile physical bodies and our fragile emotions. And so when we gain a sense of our divine self, things don't hurt us as much. I've noticed that with myself, and I'm very happy, because when I started my channel, I got a lot of terrible, nasty comments, bad. And I still see them all over the internet, because I put myself out there, to help others come out more. But I have noticed there's been a change in me as I have merged the divinity within myself and allow that to come to surface more. Those comments don't hurt me as much. It's like I've let go of the fear, because I know that I'm imperishable, that my soul is imperishable. And in fact, there was a quote that I wanted to share from Plato. The quote that I just left on my Instagram, Mystic Elven Wisdom, is, "The soul of man is immortal and imperishable." Now, why would Plato say that? It's because he knew that it's the soul that is imperishable, but it's our bodies and it's our emotional mind that sometimes feels like it can be destroyed. But as soon as you know your soul, your true self, then nothing can destroy you. And I think that that's what the victory of Jesus was about. Because when they crucified Jesus, in that tale, that was the victory over death, because he knew his true self as divine, and he wanted to share that with others. So when they crucified him, it was only his spirit that died, no, his body that died, not his spirit. And so I think that that's why people lose a sense of themselves, is because they're so fearful. I know I was too. I was fearful of getting hurt in love. I was fearful of getting hurt physically. And we hurt back people that can hurt us, or we hurt them before they can hurt us. So I think that that's where it comes from. If we just kind of see ourselves as more powerful, then maybe we'll stop hurting each other. So in one way, it might be good that we all become gods and goddesses on earth in terms of our divine selves, and still be ourselves, but just have this kind of realization of divinity. And then we'll stop hurting each other, because we'll start maybe respecting each other and seeing the power within, and maybe we can have more fun with each other. I don't know. It's just a theory. But that's a good question, Peachy Fruit. Makes me really think. Manny Wars, White Wolf. I wish I could share this knowledge with my friends and family, but they already think I'm crazy. Oh, you should watch my you should watch the video on the Kundalini awakening. Carl Jung did some studies. You could just maybe show that to them too. That Carl Jung did some studies on the Kundalini awakening on certain patients, and he said that most people that have had Kundalini awakenings in the past, they were considered to be crazy, and they were locked up in insane asylums. So I guess that's why. So just laugh at it, because they just can't see it yet, but one day they will. And that's kind of the cosmic joke and the comedy that you can experience. While everyone else calls you crazy, you know your true self. You know the divine self. And so just hold on to that knowledge and maybe show them a Carl Jung tape of him talking about that, or find an article if they need proof and evidence from academia. Maybe you could do that. I'm going to start doing that to people who call me crazy as well. Maybe that's why I made that video. Peachy fruit, putting yourself out there must have been hard to deal with. Oh, it still is, Peachy fruit. I mean, I see videos about me, going on BBC and everything. And, there's a lot of regret, but there's also a lot of happiness that I did. But yeah, it was definitely hard, but it's getting easier. It's getting easier as I'm getting older. I'm merging the divinity with myself. I'm working on darker aspects of myself, and I want to share that with others so that they can do that as well and feel that kind of that liberation and that freedom too. So it looks like everybody is pretty much aligned, all resonating on the same soul level here. Well, good. I'm glad that I didn't get anybody that is offended as maybe a Christian or Catholic, or somebody that feels that this is some kind of manipulation of Jesus, because this is from his words and I am just interpreting his context and showing you how they reflect and how they apply to us. Because I'm going to tell you something. This is how I look at the world. Everything in this world has to do with me, as it has to do with you. And there's a quote that Haldir the elf says in J.R.R. Tolkien's story as well. Just the idea that the whole world is about you, that you can't fence it in. He's telling that to Mary. And I feel that exactly, that's not being self-centered. That's realizing that everything is connected and that everything has a message for us. So I look at it this way, is that Jesus would not have said that if there was not some kind of deeper meaning for all of us to have. There's no way that you can take those words out of context and make them evil. They're only just showing the light of the true self and wanting all souls to eventually return. Because although this world is wonderful, eventually you might want to get off the merry-go-round so that you can experience something else. The Buddhists refer to it as, the rebirth cycle, the Dharma, and coming, from the wheel of life. You might want to get off of the wheel of this earthly life, and you might want to experience something else. But it's about consciousness and states of consciousness that you leave this world from. So I guess I just want everybody to feel that they have that empowerment, that they can really do that if they wish, if they are really ready to wake up from this particular dream of, political rivalry and things that are going on in the world. I mean, if we really want to change the world, then we have to have a consciousness shift within. And I really believe that. So I guess as many souls that awaken to this, we really do change the world together. And I guess that's what Jesus was trying to say. It makes a happy collective too. A merrier world, in J.R.R. Tolkien's words. Well, everyone, this has been fabulous. I love this. If you have any comments or questions, leave it down below. And like I said, please, those who are religious, don't take this as an insult to you at all. In fact, this is only to help you also. Because if you take yourself out of whatever the church says, whatever the rituals that have been ingrained in you from birth, if you just look at your life and you look at the suffering and the pain and the love and all that you have experienced, then I want you to feel empowered too. So it's not about taking the power away from the church. It's about understanding our greater interconnection so that we can really create that kingdom of heaven basically together on earth. And I believe that as advances in technology happen, as our nature reconnection happens, we're going to have a really peaceful, beautiful world. We could. That's definitely one path that we can go. So I'll just keep on that hope. And if you want to join me on that hope, we could just keep on thinking about that and working towards that particular world. Because choices are like dimensions. So we enter into different dimensions depending on our choices and what we focus on. And I'll leave this with this quote by Alan Watts that I took from one of his speeches that was really good, and I wanted to share it with you all. He said this: "The ego is nothing other than the focus of conscious attention." So when we start to put conscious attention towards the divine, and not just divine figures of light, but to go beyond just the figures of light and to actually merge yourself with the divine, then the ego shifts its attention to the divine, and that becomes the ego. That becomes the self on earth. And maybe that's the true self. And I hope that we can all start acting more like our true selves on earth together. So namaste and namaste. Thank you all for joining, and I hope to see you all in the next video.